South Kingstown and State Police did not want to comment on this report, but tomorrow we will hear from the Attorney General's office. We'll also hear more from Mary Ring. She talks about who she believes is responsible for this and how this has affected her family.
She does believe she knows somebody who is responsible for this.
Yes, she does. We'll hear that tomorrow night.
All right. Okay, Laura. We'll be back with the weather. Tony has the weekend ahead for us right after this.
In July 1996, a Jamestown woman told police that 2 men set her on fire.
However, after an investigation, police concluded that's not how it happened, that Mary Ring was never assaulted. Tonight, in an exclusive interview, Mary Ring talks about her life since the incident. 12 News reporter Laura Clarizio tells us whatever happened to Mary Ring.
I'm afraid to go out alone at night. I'm afraid for my children.
29-year-old Mary Ring says she is emotionally and physically scarred. Mary says in July of 1996, 2 men attacked her, setting her on fire. But after a 10-month investigation, authorities concluded Mary Ring was the only person behind the Dunkin' Donuts the night she says she was assaulted by 2 men wearing masks.
And the evidence was very clear at the state, local, and FBI level that there were no outside intruders in back of the Dunkin' Donuts when this incident happened, that her credibility, frankly, was called into question by the very nature of the forensic evidence.
Did you do this to yourself?
I didn't do this to myself. Who would do this to themselves? Why would they do this to themselves? It's unthinkable. If anybody wanted to kill themselves, they wouldn't choose this way. I mean, I'm in nursing school and I know what burns are. I know how painful they are. I would never do this to my family, my friends, my children.
Mary says while working at this South Kingstown Dunkin' Donuts, a customer would harass her. That man, she says, is a civilian police dispatcher. Mary says weeks before she was burned, she filed an harassment complaint against him.
He was following me and making finger gestures that he was going to kill me.
She believes he hired 2 men to attack her because he was angry she went to authorities.
One of the gentlemen said this will keep you from talking to the state police.
He has never been charged and has an alibi for that evening.
He was somewhere at 10 of 11, and it happened at 11 o'clock. He was at the police station that night. I know it was him. And I feel that justice isn't being done. I get to be the victim over and over again.
We spoke to another woman who worked at the Dunkin' Donuts, and she says the man would harass workers. But authorities say the evidence shows Mary Ring was not assaulted.
Well, I think everybody is sympathetic toward her and the emotional investment that she has in the case and her family's emotional side of the case. But I have to tell you what the evidence says. We can't deal with just emotions. We have to deal with facts.
And my prayers and thoughts are with you.
Mary says cards and letters of support helped her get through this, especially notes from her 4 daughters who wrote to her while she was in the hospital.
When you get this card, you won't have to wonder what I'm doing because you'll know I'm here, thinking about you. Just wait and see you smile again.
Mary continues to see doctors. She says the ordeal has hurt her family as well.
My youngest one is 6, and she wants to know if they got the bad guys yet. She's afraid.
Mary says that fear pushed her to make this public appeal to anyone who may know something.
I'm on TV right now because I want other people to know the truth, and I need somebody to help me close this.
Again, we must point out, as far as authorities are concerned, this case is closed. They say after a thorough 10-month investigation, there is no evidence to support Mary was ever attacked. They conclude that no one else was at the crime scene. South Kingstown Police asked the FBI to review the casework. The FBI supported the conclusion of local police. However, since the case has been closed, Mary Ring is offering a $2,000 reward to anyone who can provide information that may help and lead to an arrest in this case.
Okay, thank you for your report on that, Laura. Whatever happened to Mary Ring? We'll be right back with more of today's news.
Tensions from this latest Iraqi crisis are having an effect close to home. 6,000 Rhode Islanders served in the Persian Gulf War. Many of those soldiers witnessed death, and this latest conflict has become a painful reminder of their wartime. 12 News reporter Laura Clarizio spoke with a Pawtucket man who reflects for the first time on what it was like to be there.
I'm not afraid to say it now, but I was afraid. I was afraid that I was going to die.
In 1991, at age 21, Augusto Rojas was called to duty as a member of the U.S. Marine Corps to serve in the Persian Gulf War. His job was to transport men and supplies to the front line. January 8th, on his fiance's 21st birthday, Augusto landed in Saudi Arabia. For the next 4 months, the tent became his home. The days were hot, the nights cold, dark, and lonely.
And I cried. I saw grown men cry. You know, it's just one of the hardest things to ever do in your life, was to go somewhere and not know if you're coming home.
Augusto says the scariest moment came in the dark of night, when the Iraqis launched Scud missiles.
And you'd be holding hands with the person next to you, and you'd be saying, "Is this it?" You know, you'd be praying, saying, you know, "It's tonight the night," and you're defenseless because they're not coming at you with any type of army. They're just shooting missiles.
Thoughts of that time in his life still trigger fear and nervousness.
Yeah, I feel my hands. They're freezing cold.
They're cold because you're talking
because
about
I'm talking about it, yeah.
Augusto says his faith and family kept him going, but what he witnessed will stay with him forever, especially images of bodies.
I mean, it's like miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. Just picture 95. Just destroyed with every car on it, everyone dead. That's what it was. Man.
The memories still sting, but through it all, Kristen, the girl he left behind, has been there for him, and now they have 3 sons. Augustus feels grateful he returned home safely. Laura Clarizio, 12 News.
When you send your children to school, you certainly hope or expect they're learning in a safe, clean environment.
Students at one Providence high school say if there was a grade for classroom safety, their classroom would get an F. Students say they appealed to school administrators, but were not getting anywhere. So finally, they turned to Channel 12 for help. Reporter Laura Clarizio brings us this story, one you'll see only on 12 News.
We're unsatisfied with the conditions of our classroom.
In September, auto mechanics students at Hanley Vocational High School in Providence were instructed to report to a new classroom. They ended up in the school basement. Once a storage space, it became the place where 60 students spent 20 hours a month.
It wasn't this neat. We had to put it like this. We literally had to come down here the first quarter of school and make this classroom.
Keep in mind, this is an area where they're doing textbook studying, not hands-on auto repair work. The students say at times it's so noisy they cannot hear their teacher. Other times they say insulation falls from pipes, sometimes hitting them.
We asked them to fix the insulation, and what do? They use duct tape.
Duct tape might help, but this is actually masking tape. And throughout the room, pipes leak, causing puddles on the floor and water damage to equipment like their projector.
It stinks in here all the time. There's no ventilation. When we complained about ventilation, they told us to open the door.
The emergency exit door, yet another problem.
Look at the door. Look at the door. It's broken.
If there were the need for an emergency exit, this is what the students would encounter. Garbage and material near the door. Old lockers above the staircase that could obstruct their safe escape. How would you describe what your classroom is like?
Like garbage.
It's like garbage.
Yes.
Min Lee is a senior and one of the students on the tape. He chose to attend the vocational school so he could learn how to fix cars. Min hopes to use that trade to earn money to help finance his college tuition. Eventually, he wants to be a pharmacist. This year, he feels cheated.
It's pretty bad that, I try to listen and,
Concentrate.
Concentrate, but which is, I can't, really hear what my teacher's talking about.
Over here is a box of chemicals. Nobody knows what this is.
The box just inches away from where students sit. Although it turns out the activator is not toxic, the box is leaking.
We try to talk to them, but they seem like don't want to listen to us.
Students say they complained to the school. Their teacher even filed a grievance. But 2 months into the school year and the class was still a mess.
We're going to have to...
When the students asked for our help, we took the tape to Providence School Superintendent Arthur Zarella, who was unaware of the classroom conditions.
I expect that we deserve to have the better class than that.
That's the way how you close.
Now, tomorrow night, we will hear from School Superintendent Arthur Zarella to see what can be done. We actually go back into the school. The superintendent says part of the problem is the school has a growing population and there are simply not enough classrooms. And again, he did not know about these conditions. The students say they just want to be in a safe, clean environment to learn. And one thing that I do want to point out is that the insulation from the piping is fiberglass, not asbestos.
Okay. Good point. All right. Thank you, Laura. We'll be back with more of today's news. It's a story you'll see only on 12. Providence students, disgusted with conditions in the classroom, turn to 12 News for help.
Reporter Laura Clarizio investigates the problem and shows us the before and after.
There's all types of scrap metal around, laying around.
Auto mechanic students at Henley Vocational Technical School in Providence say since September, they complained to their school about unsafe and unhealthy classroom conditions. They say they tried cleaning up, and their teacher filed a grievance. But in late October, they were still reporting to this makeshift classroom in the school's basement. This is where 60 students spend 20 hours a month, not doing hands-on repair work, but regular textbook work.
We have all types of insulation falling off on us all the time. We always have to clean it up.
When the students asked for our help, we brought their home videotape to School Superintendent Arthur Zarella.
You didn't know about this?
No, I didn't. And it bothers me that this is the way I have to find out about it, which is no criticism of the media, because you're doing what you have to do. But
Superintendent Zarella says this year the auto mechanic students were moved to the basement because there are not enough classrooms to accommodate the number of teens attending the school.
Is that a place that's conducive to learning?
is that a place that's conducive to learning? I'd rather answer the question is, I wish I had a better place.
After seeing the tape, the school superintendent vowed to make changes, some of which he believed were already in the works.
There's a box of chemicals. Nobody knows what this is.
That was the 30th. I would hope that if you choose to go back there and look, that that box is gone.
We did go back, along with Assistant Superintendent Ricky Wilson. We also found the box, along with this leaky pipe that, according to the school administrator, was clamped the week before. Masking tape was still covering air ducts.
And it's apparent to me that we're going to have to readjust some of our priorities and have the carpentry shop give some attention to down here.
And remember the emergency exit door that fell off its hinges? That was fixed, but the outside was still the same.
I am a little concerned regarding the obstacles or the obstructions here. We will do something about. We'll do something about this immediately.
The students' biggest complaints were poor ventilation and a noisy classroom.
It's distracting to talking to you listening to it.
Well,
That's being honest.
To be honest, it's not the optimum condition under which we'd want kids doing bookwork.
And while we were down there, we noticed this piece of scrap metal directly above a desk, the metal attached to nothing.
I guess if you came down here, you could find 100 things wrong with this room.
Being conservative, yes.
As promised by School Superintendent Arthur Zarella, changes were made immediately. 7 days after we showed him the videotape, we went back to look at the work in progress. Insulated walls have been put up, leaky pipes reclamped, the floor is cleaner, duct tape instead of masking tape is where it should be, and the noise level has been cut down considerably. Most importantly, the passageway from the emergency exit door is now free of debris.
You know, the kids are to be commended because they had a legitimate concern about the condition of the room in which they were learning.
Now, the classroom should be completed by Monday, and what turned out nicely is that students at the vocational school actually did a lot of the repair work, and they did get paid for their services. And the school superintendent tells me he will meet with the students that were in that classroom to discuss the problems, and he asked me to pass along this message that he does have an open door policy, so if any students in the Providence school system have problems, he wants them to turn to him.
What a change, though.
Yeah, good job.
I think that's proof that Arthur Zarella does have an open door policy when he reacts to that and does something done.
Kept his promise.
Absolutely.
Very
important.
Thanks, Laura.
Providence High School students learned a valuable lesson today. People at the top really do care. Last week, we showed you video of a classroom in disrepair. When we took that to the superintendent of schools, he took action. 12 News reporter Laura Clarizio shows us the final outcome.
Look at the door. It's broken.
October 30th, students at the Hanley Vocational Technical School in Providence videotaped their makeshift classroom.
It stinks in here all the time.
In September, the auto mechanic students were moved to the school's basement because of overcrowding. For more than 2 months, this was the place where they did textbook studying, not hands-on auto repair work. The students say they complained to the administration, saying the room was unsafe and unhealthy.
When we complained about ventilation, they told us to open the door.
Leaky pipes, poor ventilation, and a noisy classroom were among the complaints. Their teacher filed a grievance, but the students say not much changed.
It's like a garbage room.
Yes.
November 4th, they brought the tape to us. November 6th, we showed it to Superintendent Arthur Zarella, who was unaware of the classroom conditions. That day, he promised to make changes. This Monday, the students returned to a new and improved classroom. The ventilation and noise level have been improved. The students are much happier.
I really want to compliment you.
Today, the superintendent met with the students who made the tape, thanking them for being responsible in accomplishing their task.
And as much as it was a little difficult for me, it was really very refreshing that you two thought enough about where your classroom and your learning environment. I've had my respect for students increased another notch.
The students say the feeling is mutual.
He says the door is open, so next time probably we go in first. Sure.
You're going to go into the superintendent first.
So,
but you feel good about what happened?
yes.
You're happy with the new classroom?
Yes, we really appreciate that, and he fixes our classroom.
In Providence, Laura Clarizio, 12 News.
Coming up, details on the patient's. Good afternoon, I'm Walter Cryan.
And I'm Pat Masters.
New England Patriots coach Pete Carroll calls it sophomoric.
He is not talking about Sunday's game, but an incident at a Boston bar involving several Patriots players. 12 News has obtained photographs of that incident and talked to a witness. 12 News reporter Laura Clarizio is live in Foxborough now with details. Laura?
Well, Pat, just moments ago, Drew Bledsoe was on the radio talking about the incident. He says he is not sorry that he went to the concert, but he is sorry that he jumped off the stage. But he told the media and the people that were listening to the radio that it did not affect his concentration in yesterday's game. However, many people are wondering if that incident affected the entire team and their lack of focus.
After viewing the film, our performance was really more disgusting than I thought after the game.
At Coach Pete Carroll's weekly Patriots press conference, focus was on how badly the Pats performed in Sunday's Tampa Bay game, on and off the field.
In that particular case, it was sophomoric behavior. It was faced with an opportunity to make a good decision, we made the wrong decision.
The sophomoric behavior he is talking about involves an incident with 3 players Thursday night at a Boston nightclub. Quarterback Drew Bledsoe, backup quarterback Scott Zolak, and lineman Max Lane were at a concert at the Paradise. This photo shows Bledsoe on stage. Another shows the quarterback being helped up by the crowd. Allegedly, all 3 players jumped into a mosh pit, landing one woman in the hospital. Critics are questioning if that dive is related to the dive they took in Sunday's game, losing 27-7. Bledsoe was sacked 5 times.
The only thing that I will say about that is that it had absolutely nothing to do with our preparation this week. It had nothing to do with our mindset coming into the game.
Others are questioning if Coach Carroll is disciplining the team.
And the guy had a choice to make a good decision and made a bad one. I mean, it just flat pisses you off because you work so hard to get this thing in line and to get it in order. If something does affect it, it's inexcusable. It's intolerable.
Today in the locker room, Max Lane said he was not at liberty to comment on the incident.
Guys are going out having a good time on a Thursday night. You know, if that's the worst we got, then you're kind of looking for things.
However, offensive tackle Bruce Armstrong reiterated to the press the mosh pitting incident was not the reason why the team lost the game or their concentration.
I don't think it bothered us at all. I don't think there's a cause and effect relationship between what happened Thursday and what happened Sunday. We just didn't play well.
Now, this incident is still under investigation. It is still unclear how the woman obtained those injuries. The hospital is not releasing any more information on her. Now, when Pete Carroll was asked by the media what disciplinary actions will be taken against these 3 players, he said it was handled internally and he would not comment any further. Pat, back to you.
All right, thank you, Laura. Walter?
WPRI, you're watching 12 News at 6.
Tonight, former Warwick police officer Jeffrey Hornoff breaks his silence and talks about the 1989 murder of Victoria Cushman.
Plus, the parents of the world's only living set of septuplets receive many gifts to help with their 7 bundles of joy.
And improvements are made to this Providence classroom after students take action. See the finished project.
Good evening, I'm Walter Cryan.
And I'm Karen Adams. For the first time, former Warwick police officer Jeffrey Scott Hornoff is talking about his murder conviction.
In 1996, he was sentenced to life in prison for killing Victoria Cushman. 12 News reporter Laura Clarizio has the exclusive interview.
People have a right to expect more from a police officer. We're supposed to be a symbol, and people saw that I had flaws. I drank too much, I chased women, and it counted against me, and rightly so. But I was just a kid.
Jeffrey Scott Hornoff is no longer a kid and could spend most of his adult years locked away. In June of 1996, a jury found him guilty of first-degree murder. 12 people agreed that in August of 1989, the 26-year-old used a fire extinguisher to bludgeon to death 29-year-old Victoria Cushman. With his attorney and a special investigator at his side, Hornoff for the first time publicly speaks about Victoria Cushman.
It wasn't that we were lovers or she was my mistress. We were friends. I've never denied that. We were friends, and we made a mistake. We shared intimacies, and it happened twice.
Victoria Cushman's body was found in her Maple Street apartment in Warwick. That day, police discovered this unopened letter addressed to Hornoff.
Vicki said that she knew that there couldn't be anything between us, but she wanted to keep seeing me. And that's basically all the letter said.
And she never threatened to tell your wife?
No, she didn't.
During the trial, his defense attorney argued the state had a weak case, saying there was no physical evidence linking Hornoff to the crime.
I don't believe that.
The state, however, stands behind the evidence and conviction.
The 12 independent people hearing the evidence without any bias whatsoever convicted Mr. Hornoff based on the evidence which they heard. And if they didn't feel that way, they wouldn't have convicted him.
People have seen me represented by the prosecutor as a stark, sinister person who could take a life.
Hornoff says he is not a violent person and recalls a situation on duty where he says he could not harm a suspect.
We had a tip that a couple of guys were going to rob a night depositor. And turned out a guy pointed a gun at me. I couldn't shoot him. I'm glad he didn't shoot me, but I'm not a taker of life.
But many believe he is, including Victoria's father.
What gave him the feeling that he had the right to do something like this?
Robinson Cushman did not want to go on camera for this story, but as in the past, says he still believes Hornoff took his daughter's life.
State police, Warwick police, jurors, prosecutors say you did this. Could all those people be wrong?
They are wrong. They looked at me so long and so hard that they convinced themselves I didn't kill Vicki.
That's the same thing he told his superior officers. However, when first questioned, he denied the affair.
I didn't admit to my being intimate with her because I didn't want it being tape recorded at the time. I felt that if my wife was going to find out about it, I wanted to tell her.
It is still unclear if Hornoff was ever taped, and what jurors were not allowed to hear because of Rhode Island law is that he took a polygraph the same night he was questioned.
They came back that I was being truthful.
Truthful as to what?
As to, I had involvement with Vicki. I had sexual relations, but I didn't kill her.
But the credibility of how the polygraph was administered has come into question, along with the department's handling of the investigation. As a result, state police took over. In 1992, 3 years after the murder, Hornoff was arrested.
Because I cheated on my wife doesn't mean I'm a killer. I'm not.
Because the case is on appeal, state police did not want to comment. Warwick police were investigated for the way the case was handled. One report found no criminal wrongdoing. However, one major was demoted to the rank of captain and is no longer with the force. Now, tomorrow night, we will hear more from the Attorney General's office. And as you heard, the state stands behind this conviction. We'll also hear more from Hornoff, his wife, his mother, and also a special investigator who's looking into this case. Says he has some newly discovered evidence and it's hoping he can clear Hornoff with it.
But the victim's father still says he will not talk to you again.
No, he didn't want to talk for this interview, but he still believes on the phone, he told me, that this is the person that killed his daughter.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. It's a murder that went unsolved for 3 years until a Warwick police officer was arrested. 7 years after the crime, Jeffrey Scott Hornoff was convicted of killing Victoria Cushman. Now a special investigator is working on evidence hoping to clear Hornoff. In an exclusive interview with 12 News reporter Laura Clarizio, Hornoff talks for the first time.
My whole family's in prison. It's not just me. And the hardest part about being here isn't being a cop, and it's not even that I'm innocent. It's trying to be a dad.
Since June of 1996, Jeffrey Scott Hornoff has been away from his wife and 3 boys, locked away at the ACI. At age 33, he was convicted of first-degree murder. Authorities say in 1989 he bludgeoned to death 29-year-old Victoria Cushman. His motive to keep their affair a secret. However, Hornoff has always maintained his innocence. And despite public criticism, his wife Rhonda stands behind him.
God help the person who's sitting out there laughing at the fact that my husband is in jail for something that they did.
During the trial, Rhonda Hornoff testified for her husband. But the state pointed out there were inconsistencies between what Hornoff told police regarding his whereabouts the night of the murder and her account. Rhonda says her husband was at a party and returned to their Warwick home around 11:30, went back to the party, but was in bed by 1 a.m. However, prosecutors successfully argued he returned home later than 1 a.m., and at some point between August 10th and 11th, he murdered Victoria Cushman in her Maple Street apartment.
What's your biggest hope?
Hope is for him to walk out of there a free man and just spend all the time he can with those boys who miss him so much.
I did some bad things to my wife. I was unfaithful to her. And I have a lot of regrets. I'm not perfect. I have a lot of faults. And I regret not being there for my littlest boy's birthday.
Despite Hornoff's display of emotion, authorities are still convinced he is the killer.
Sorry.
We've been through his case many times, and the jury spoke loud and clear regarding his guilt and where the evidence led them to conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that he was the murderer of Victoria Cushman.
Oh, never. He was such a good little boy. He's a good son. Very good son. So it's hard. Oh, he couldn't hurt no one.
His mother, Betty June Hornoff, is still in disbelief. She, like Rhonda, continues to fight for him.
You still stand behind him?
As his friend, I stand behind him. I'll stand next to him. I'll stand beside him. I'll stand on the highest mountain and tell you that I believe in him.
With that strong belief, the family turned to the National Police Defense Foundation, a nonprofit organization that assists officers in trouble.
Without any doubt in my mind, we established that Scott Hornoff could not be a killer.
Boris Korchuk is the chief investigator and believes local and state police made mistakes in the investigation.
I don't think that they paid attention to testimonies. I don't think they reviewed the evidence correctly. I don't think they made a step towards finding more people than one as a suspect, and there were a number of obvious suspects in this case.
You know, what the National Police Fund should do is give credit to good police work, and what the state police did and what people in my office did was good investigative police work.
There will always be people that say, Scott Hornoff did this. He is a murderer. Why should anyone believe you?
Why should they believe me? Because there's a killer out there.
The victim's family did not want to go on camera, but Victoria Cushman's father told me he still believes Hornoff is responsible for the murder, and because the case is on appeal, state police did not want to comment as well. Now, the National Police Defense Foundation says they have found newly discovered evidence. They're hoping that will help clear him. They also say they have a list of 3 suspects that they are looking into, but they will not go into details about the investigation or those suspects.
So you don't know if they have enough to go to an appellate court? Or?
At this point, no. And if they did, they won't tell me first. They'll have to go through the court system first.
Okay. Thank you, Laura.
Students at One Providence High School were disgusted with the poor conditions in their classroom. They turned to 12 News reporter Laura Clarizio for help. See what she found out in a 12 News investigative report, Thursday at 6 and 11 on 12 News. Students disgusted with the conditions in their school turned to 12 News for help. See what we found out in a 12 News investigative report, Thursday at 6 and 11 on 12 News. When teens felt that the poor conditions in their Providence High School were not being addressed, they turned to 12 News. 12 News reporter Laura Clarizio took their tape to the administration and got results. Now Hanley Technical School is on the road to repair. 12 News investigative reports, making a difference.
Mary Ring claims she was brutally attacked and set on fire last year, but not everyone accepts her story. Now she speaks for the first time in an exclusive interview with 12 News reporter Laura Clarizio.
Did you do this to yourself?
Exclusive. Whatever happened to Mary Ring? Thursday at 6 and 11 on 12 News. Mary Ring claims she was brutally attacked and set on fire last year. Now she talks to 12 News.
Did you do this to yourself?
Exclusive. Whatever happened to Mary Ring?